Good evening.
Good
How's everybody?
evening. Good.
Welcome aboard. You may notice we are missing a regular panel guest today. That's because Tom has handed the reins over to me. He's off washing his hair tonight. So bear with me. Things might go a little bit wrong, but we'll try our best. He's using Dong shampoo by the looks of it. So
He will be quick.
Tonight we've got Richard Ross all the way from California joining us to talk all things reefing. We've got a lot to cover, Richard, so we'll try and squeeze in as much as we can. Please talk as much as you want about any of the topics that come up. And as always, we've got all the audience with us to fire questions in live, which I'll bring up on screen to put to you. But
right
anyway,
on.
Thank goodness it's Friday, gents. How is everyone?
Very good.
Good.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Fighting a cold right now, man. So I apologize in advance if my voice sounds raspy and I cough here and there. I'll try to mute it. But yeah, getting over the flu. So
it's never good. Never good. Your voice sounds great, Terrell. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's
Character.
a very good Friday to you all. What's the weather like down in California, Richard?
It's really nice. It's really sunny and warm out. My little aquarium solar panels are all pulling about 500 watts each right now, which is like a miracle. So I'm thrilled. And yeah, the weather's it's a little windy.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got three EcoFlow units, power stations, and I decided, why don't I just put a solar panel for each of those rather than try to put the whole house? And then I realized a watt's a watt's a watt. So who cares what's using those watts? And right now I'm pulling actually probably about 1,800 watts because I got one I'm testing as well. So that's really fun for me because I don't know why that's fun for me, but it is.
Look, you live in the perfect place to get free energy, right, from the sun.
You would think my house is like perfectly the wrong direction. So when they come out, they go, you're not gonna be able to get what you want out of this. You'll have to go over panel by so much. But then I was like, I could get smaller panels, 600 watt panels to deliver 500 watts to a power station. That's easy. And that seems to be working. So I'm pretty excited about that. Like somehow the 1,500 watts I'm making is going to counteract what I'm using for aquariums.
Well, look, you can live in the UK, which is grey, miserable, and rainy 95% of the time, and our government is gung ho and putting solar in everywhere. So make it make sense.
Yeah, and the solar's getting better. So, on cloudy days, I'm making some, which is shocking to me.
Now, do you use those generators as backups for your tanks? Or you just have them kind of used in your house in general, or what?
I use them as backups. I have a, how big is it? A 15 kilowatt system for the tank itself, with 3 big rack mounted batteries. Took a long time to figure this out. And then I was like, when these EcoFlows come on sale, they're pretty affordable. So I thought, these are great little, I can have them on the solar, on the big battery system, to double it up and also get some control. And now it turns out I can do all this. So that's pretty good. I really wanted to go whole house solar, but it's just so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. How about a Tesla wall?
Yeah, so expensive.
Yeah, that's
so expensive. And then every time I tried to talk to any solar company, they were just all my scam alarms just screamed at me. Just everything about it screamed scam. And I talked to like 6 of them, and I went, forget it.
It almost feels like unless you got the money to buy it outright and not hurt on that investment, it's not worth trying to.
Yeah.
Agreed. I mean, I should say, I know that as great as the UK is at the minute, before I get called out by people in the comments for being red as usual, yes, I get it. I went fishing this week, and it was a 24-hour session, and it was grey, miserable, windy, and horrible. I spent most of the time in my bivvy, locked away from the elements. The sun came out for 1 hour in March, and I got sunburned.
Oh.
So, yes, legitimately, I'm a bit red tonight, so you can have that one. Right, guys, before we jump into the main topics, I just want to go in and do a bit of a roll call. Say hello to see who's joined us tonight. As ever, Mr. John Wright first in. How we doing, John? Hope you're well. We've got Techers in the house. Evening. John Wright's talking again. Gazargar, how are we doing? Rama, good to see you, Tom.
Rama
was out with your brother-in-law today doing your day job. I didn't like it. Oh, Junior 4488. That's a new one to me, but hi, welcome over. Good to see you. Scott X Reef, looking at the eyes. I hope that's not my panda eyes you're getting at, but great to see you. Hiya, James Mylott, how are we doing? And Tommy and Shaz, good to see you all. I'll have to give a toast to these two, some of the nicest people in reefing. Harry West, good to have you with us, Harry. Dave's Reef. God, this is quite challenging going through all these comments. There's loads of us in the house.
Oh,
Rondo's here. Hey, Rondo, how you doing, mate? Try
Ron!
to take over the hosting sort of badge from you, mate. Keep going. People are talking amongst themselves. Mr. Mark Coates is with us. Hello, Mark. Hope you're well.
What's up, Mark?
Woody's Reef. Hello. We have Lindsay, of course. Lindsay's always here. That's not here. We have Coach. Hiya, Coach. You salty lot. Now, Irish Ship Guy, Dean. How are we doing, Dean? Good to see you.
Hello.
Thanks, Lindsay. Amanda Meckley, how are we doing over there? Hope you're good. Pretty cool. How we doing, buddy? Good evening. Stephen Owens here. Nice to see you and your son back at the meet. Hope you're doing well. Dan's Reef. We can see Dan all the way up there. How you doing, Dan? Hope you're good. Anthony, UKM 120. Spiller's Reef. Leafy Reese, Mr. Rickson. Good evening. Sorry. This does go on for a little while in case you
That's
haven't
cool.
seen this, Richard.
I love it.
We have the Dak family with us. Fantastic. Good to have you with us. Keep going. I think there's a few more coming in. Kumar's in the house. How are we doing, Kumar? I think we're nearly there. Practical Reefer. Good evening, Mr. Practical Reefer. Where are we now?
REEF BEEF.
We're getting to the end. Mickey Boy Mick MBM, good friend of the show. How you doing, Mick? Nick Bro 409. Good to see you. Good to have you with us. Dirt Devil's Reef. I do love that name. And then we have the Impatient Reefer. I mean, aren't we all?
A little bit.
Good to see you. W Mars 4655. Good to see you, and what a treat having you with us. Acroadic J. Crikey, this list is going on and on.
Wow.
Peter Parry, could not miss Peter Parry, and of course the lovely Elisa. I think Tony Close. Hiya, Tony. And I think that is just about us at the moment. So, wow, boom. That was a massive roll call. Thank you all for joining us. Let's hope, hopefully it's going to be worth your while.
Thank you, guys.
So, I think we'll pass the first question over to our guest tonight, Mr. Richard Ross. So,
Me?
But
What?
we know a
What
bit
I do?
about you, Richard, over here. We know a bit about you. You've been in the game for a long time. If people know what Richard does, where do I start? So let's hand it over to you. Can you give us a brief introduction? How does a professional juggler, drone pilot, script writer become an acro spawner? Tell us your story.
A lot of Red Bull, I think, is that. No, I just kind of I have somehow been able to jump from kind of career to career every 7 to 10 years, and have luckily been able to follow things that have interested me and followed them. So, I got a degree. I started with aquariums when I was a kid. My dad had them. That's like everybody's story, right? Worked at fish stores through college, through high school and college. Was transshipping animals through my dorm in college, which in hindsight was a horrible, terrible thing to do to my roommates. Just dumb. And then I became a juggler because that was really fun. And I did that for natural progression. I had always juggled. But so then I was during college, I would do some shows just for fun. And then all of a sudden I was making a living doing shows. So I moved to San Francisco and started doing that full time, and then got into a partnership with that. And that was great for, another 10 years. Did a lot of corporate stuff by the end, which is probably why I got out of it. It just became a grind of doing, writing one trade show presentation while performing another, while memorizing next week's. And it was, it's not super creative. So stopped that and became a glass blower. And that was pretty great. And then I was a stay-at-home dad. Yeah, I was a glass blower. I had a studio. My friend owns it now, for about 10 years in there somewhere, or 8 years, I guess.
So really... are you the guy to blame for the goldfish bowl craze then?
No, that's not me. I make weird stuff. I can't show you because my thing's stuck on a background. Next time I'll figure out how to get that off from behind me. And then what happened? Then we had a kid. I became a stay-at-home dad, and I got way back into keeping aquariums while that was happening. Started breeding cuttlefish because they became available and I had the space. And then started writing articles and doing stuff in the reef keeping world. And then I got a job somehow at the academy and did that for about 12 years. And now I've retired from that, and I'm an independent researcher. Did that say how many balls? I could do 5. I could flash 7.
Wow.
Wow.
I could throw 7 up and catch them. I don't know if I still could do that. I could do 5 right now. But it's so crazy because that was 20 years ago that I stopped that, maybe more. And the people who are juggling now are so much better. Just like how reef keeping is so much better than it used to be. Everything just gets better. Once people know something's possible, that becomes the baseline. The thing that we couldn't do before, and everyone was striving to do, becomes the baseline, just like in reef keeping. So that's pretty cool. And now I got this lab. Oh, you can't see it. Sorry.
So that's like the most varied career hobby whatever. Where did the reefing slide into that? Where did you get involved in aquatics?
When in high school, when I was working at a fish store, that must have been in the 80s. Because I'm 107 years old. And then we really didn't know what we were doing with reef keeping, and we had saltwater, but lots of that was, dead corals that people would take out and put in their dishwasher once a month to make white again. Cause apparently, I guess people didn't realize they were looking at dead things. They thought they should be white. And saltwater was harder back then, but we were getting used to it. And then when I was out of it, and then when I got back into it, when we had a kid, it had gotten so much better. It was like, oh, this is doable now. And that's how, it started with, one tank, and now it's stupid. It's all around the house. It's like I have one distributed system all around the house. It's about 600 gallons.
So how many tanks are you running in the house currently?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like. And all except the 5-gallon that I just set up is all one system. To make life easier. I'm a lazy, and if I had to clean 5 skimmers, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so you've got all the benefits of like single dosing set, single calc store, whatever equipment you run, one of each. What about the cons of redundancy? If you get something go wrong, or how do you deal with that? Can you isolate?
Yeah, everything is isolatable pretty easily. So that works out fine. And I think the benefits I get of the bigger water volume outweighs anything I would get from having discrete systems. It's interesting to learn some things because I don't pump a ton of water through all of the tanks. Some of the tanks are only using a dose system, a peristaltic pump for water in and out. So the most that can do, and the most that can do is I do like 100,000 mil a day, which is 100 liters, right? Is that right? Yeah, that sounds right. It's about 30 gallons. So, so that's the max that they get exchanged. But each system is its own has got its own biological filtration in it. So all I care about is, that there's enough exchange. What I did learn by doing that, though, is if you don't have enough exchange and it's hot, you'll get salinity difference in different tanks. So you be able, either you get more water or you deal with that somehow.
What do you run for?
Hey, Rich. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. What do you run for temperature in your tanks?
The spawning systems are on their own, that changes throughout the year from about 75. I can only do. I've
got my conversion thing here. Don't worry.
Do you?
Don't worry.
I was going to say the wannabe colonizer imperial.
75 Fahrenheit is 23.8 Celsius, 24 degrees.
Okay. And what's 79?
79. God, I'm on the spot here, aren't I? 26.
26. So that's pretty much what I like them to run, somewhere in there. The display sometimes gets up to 26, maybe 27. I don't worry so much about that.
I guess you've got the same problems as Terror's got there. It's more for you focused on keeping the temps down than heating them up, right?
Yeah, usually where I'm at, because my sumps are under the house in the crawl space, so they're essentially outside. So that actually really helps me out in the winter. I mean, in the summer when it's hot, because they don't heat up as much. So in the winter, I probably have to rely on heating more, but I don't need to run a chiller. So that works out really nice.
Nice.
Perfect. Sorry, Doggy.
Well, Rich. Yeah, Rich. I have beef.
You have beef?
Yeah, I have beef. I want to show you the beef.
Show me the beef, and then we'll talk about it when I record with Ben. You literally have beef.
That's my beef. A very nice piece of beef.
Thank you for sharing the beef. Somebody was telling me that you take beef and you dip it in your tank once a day instead of the fish sauce.
I think that would be really fascinating. Because
wet.
I keep saltwater piranha.
You can marinate that beef in your tank.
Actually, that a friend of mine just came over, and then he mentioned to me he looked at my sodium hydroxide. Okay, and then he told me that he used the same thing to make donuts. So he dipped the donut into the sodium hydroxide solution and then fry it. Oh,
what does that do?
Oh, wow. So you make it more crispy or something?
Sure, try that with our fish.
Oh, wow. So how do you start the reef beef?
Reef beef started, I retired, essentially. It's taken me a long time to say that. And it was during COVID, I think. Yeah, it was during COVID. And I wanted to do something that, I miss talking to people, and I needed something to do, I guess. So I called up Ben Johnson and said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" He's like, "I don't want to do a lot of work." And I was like, "No work. We're just gonna record it from the hip and go. I don't care. We're too precious about trying to make everything perfect. I don't want to do that." And so we did a few episodes. It was I think we called it Talking Reef Shit was when we started. And then a gentleman who goes by the name of Snowman got a hold of us and said, "I'll do the hard parts. I'll do the back end and the editing and the website and take care of all that stuff. You just do the show." And we said, "Oh, okay." And that's how it started. And that's like 4 or 5 years now. We're like at 160 episodes, and every 40 episodes or so, I start going, "God, we got nothing to say. I'm just phoning this in." And then something exciting happens again, and we get excited again. So, as long as we're enjoying it and people seem to be enjoying it, we'll keep doing it. We're trying to not do what everybody else is doing, in the space, which is why we try to be, as stupid as possible, and try to try to tell stories, but and also I try. Sounds weird, but we try not to cater to beginners. And I think if we wanted a big audience, we would do beginner reef stuff. But because that's a bigger audience and it turns over all the time, and look, I'm talking with my hands, and but I'm more interested in the esoteric weird stuff. So I want to run down weird pathways and talk about philosophy and generalities about how to keep a reef tank rather than recipes. When people come to me with reef recipes, it's like, that's great to get you going, but you need to abandon it pretty quickly.
So what would you consider like a difference between like reef philosophy versus reef recipe?
A reef recipe is steps that you follow without knowing why. And so I guess the difference would be, and I ask people this all the time, I say, what's your why for that? So whatever they say, I say, I don't like saying, why do you think that? Because people think that, take that aggressively. Or, so I like saying, hey, what's your why for that? Like, as curious as I can be about it. I think if you have a why for everything you're doing, even if the why is wrong, turns out to be wrong, you'll end up being a better reef keeper in the future because you build on those ideas. And that's how you get a framework of knowing what you're doing.
So would you think would it be like you start as a reefing recipe, and as you understand more, now it turns into a reefing philosophy?
Absolutely. That's just like with any new thing. But I'll give you a good example of how a why is helpful. I came home once and my system had a caulk overdose. And it's the second time that's happened to me. Happened two different ways. Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong way. Two. And the pH was 10.8, and the fish were rolling around in milk, and it was terrible. And because I threw some tonic water in there because it's got CO2. So there's the first why. I understand what will bring my pH down, adding CO2 to the water. And then I thought about it and I went, I have a CO2 tank for my calcium reactor. So I ran a line from the CO2 tank straight into the display. I changed which pH probe the CO2 reactor worked. And I set it to dose into the tank itself. And so, boom, I was able to bring the pH back down, and all the fish recovered really quickly. And it was set up and automated, so it ran all night. So I saved a bunch of stuff. And if I didn't understand what was going on with the high pH and what to do about pH and how pH works, I never would have gotten to that step. And then, of course, I have the why of the calcium reactor and how the calcium reactor works and how the controller works. So I think all of those things help out. But at the beginning, you don't know what you're doing. So I always say, find somebody who you like the look of their tank and then take their advice. If you don't like the look of their tank, don't take their advice. And I suggest starting with, and I've changed this recently. I used to say like a 5-gallon tank, but I think a 10 or 15-gallon tank is a good way to start. It's got enough forgiveness in it if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. A smaller tank you're on the line all the time. Yeah. And play with it for 6 months and learn about this, because if you jump right into something big, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know what you want, and you don't know if you like this. And so, take 4-6 months, run a tank through a cycle, get all, aquacultured animals, and see if this is for you. I guess you could do like a tiny tank, like PNW Aquatics has the tiny little portable tanks. That's pretty cool, because just once a week you go into the fish store and you go test my water and do my water change, and you can be done that way.
They pull out a syringe and suck out the entire contents of it. I make you 100% right there, Richard. I think there are two types of reefers in this hobby. There are the casual aquarists, I suppose, that just want to have a fish tank to look nice in the living room, and if they get a pH problem, they go to the shop and they say, go and put 2 capfuls of this jollop in there and that will fix it for you. And away they go. And then you've got us, and probably most of the people in this stream on a Friday night, for Christ's sake, who are probably the other type of aquarists who need to know the whys and the what ifs and get to the bottom of it all. And I think there's never really an in between with that. I don't think I'm very skeptical on anything I put in this tank, and I need to know dose rates. I need to know cause and effect and everything I do. I don't think I can ever go middle ground and say, sod it, I'll just put some in and see what it does. I can never do that. I know, right?
I think that makes sense. I just want to have a why. But for my whys, I need to think they're good whys. For your whys, I don't have to agree with your why. I'm just happy if you have a why. And I think also what's neat is that I think those two halves of the hobby need to be friendlier to each other. I think there comes it's the brown belt problem, right? If you've done martial arts, you don't want to spar the brown belts because they have something to prove. So you're going to get hurt because they're trying to prove something. And that's great. I'd like to do that more without people, calling each other names, unless it's in good fun, because we're all here for the same reason. There's only a few players, I think, in the industry who are nefarious, horrible people. Everyone else
names,
is just,
no names.
No names. I wouldn't even name them. It would be never mind. But Ben Johnson. Sorry. I hate that guy so much. Yeah, we're all just generally trying our best to do the best we can. And somebody who was given information that they thought was right, and has served them until it didn't. You can't browbeat them into believing that they did it wrong. You just have to say what you say, and if they jive on it, great. And if they don't, there's nothing you can do. And of course I'm a hypocrite because for years I was on forums but we know answers to things, and that just makes people want to hit you.
So I'm gonna steer this down that path then of having to know the whys of everything. It's led you to a very successful conclusion, right? So if we can, there's a few people commenting about it. We could talk about your successes with spawning. Because,
sure.
I mean, that's got to be the pinnacle of the hobby, right? To get our animals to be so happy and flourishing that they spawn and regenerate. So how did you come to this? Because I think this is going to be the way the hobby goes, especially with things like CITES lists and import bans that are all like looming in the future, and sustainability and all the rest of it. So would you mind talking us up to sort of where you got to and how you come to spawn your first acros?
Yeah, I think that the first, I was on expedition in the Philippines in 2011, and me and Matt Wandell and Bart Shepard were on a night dive, and we were swimming around, and all of a sudden I started seeing all this stuff in the water, and I didn't know what it was, and it wouldn't go away. And then it dawned on me that it was a coral spawn. And this was, we had no idea in that area when spawns were supposed to happen. It wasn't even on anyone's radar for it to happen. And the three of us all kind of figured it out at the same time and started screaming underwater at each other. And it was insane to witness. I never thought I would ever get the chance to see that in real life.
Right place, right time, I suppose, right?
Yeah. And it was just, wow, right? You're in the middle of a David Attenborough TV show. It was just, just wild. And then the next year or two, I met some guys from Secor who were doing coral spawning work in the Caribbean, and was able to go and where did I go first? Oh no, and then Florida, the Florida Coral Restoration Foundation was doing spawning work at their nursery in Florida. And I was able to go out there, and I went out there for about 5 or 6 seasons, collecting the spawn and, getting them to develop into larvae. And then we would send those larvae to institutions and try to figure out how to settle them. And that was pretty great. And then Jamie Craggs figured out how to make it go in tanks in, I guess, 2015. And then and then I kept doing spawning stuff with Secor in various places. and with the Florida Aquarium, and learned a lot from all of that. And then Rebecca Albright worked at the California Academy of Sciences, and she had a lab and wanted to do coral spawning. So they tapped me to help build a coral spawning system and set it up. And then that was in 2018, and we flew to Palau and collected broodstock and brought it back, and then they spawned, and it was exciting. And I did that there for a few years. And then when I retired, part of it was that, you know, I wanted to see how to do it. How does a person do it, you know, besides an institution? Because you know, like I'm writing about in coral, if you get to a point where you're even considering coral spawning in your tank, you know, you're a reef keeping genius, in my opinion. You know, you've learned how to troubleshoot all kinds of weird stuff, and you've learned how to think through all kinds of problems, and you've got all kinds of skill and knowledge, and that's why I want you to be trying coral spawning, even if you just do a discrete part of it, because the more people who get in on it, the more we're going to learn faster, and the easier it's going to become. You know, you look at clownfish that started, you know, in the 90s, breeding clownfish, and that was a Herculean, impossible effort at first, and very quickly it became like, oh yeah, you should breed clownfish once just because. You know, and I can't wait for corals to get that way. It'll be really exciting, because all kinds of stuff's going to happen. And I think we, being unconstrained by institution constraints, can do whatever we want. So, you know, if you've got some weird idea about how to get things to settle, you can just do it. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
you don't have to
really. Sorry, we've already seen some really cool like splices coming through where two settle together and grow intertwined, and you get that sort of bicoloration. So there's future prospects with that. Then you've got the prospect of spawning those with another you know what I mean? And obviously it's a game of patience, because this is probably a once annual event, unless you really tune your skills in. They can get a couple of spawns. But I mean, the lay hobbyists then. So would you encourage the lay hobbyists to give this a go? Is it achievable?
Absolutely. I would encourage any hobbyist. I finally broke this down. You don't have to bite off a giant piece of this hot dog. I don't know why I said hot dog. I didn't like cake. I changed it to hot dog. You don't have to take this whole thing at once, right? So if you try to spawn and settle, and you know, spawn and develop and settle and then raise, that's a huge undertaking. But if you just try to get a coral spawn, that's easy. You know, setting up what you need to do for a synchronous spawn. You know, I've got as recipe as I can in the coral article that's out right now. You can just do that. If you have a controller, if you have an Apex at least, it's really just plug in the numbers and go, and then check at these times, and then you go, wow, a coral spawn. And that's really cool. That's on its own. That's really neat. And I would like more people just to do that part, because it's so cool to see. And then if you want to do the next steps, there's more work involved. So it's up to you, but at least the first step is pretty easy. I mean, it takes a year or so, but you know.
Do you have to feed the coral heavily so that to let them have enough energy to spawn?
I think so, but I think if something has a mouth, you want to feed it. So I've always tried to heavily feed my corals. They have mouths.
What do you use?
They're there for something. I use everything. I just kind of use a trash can approach. I have auto feeders that have all kinds of powdered and flake foods. I like flake food a lot. I generally use PE mysis. Because to me, that seems like it's just mysis. That's getting harder to get for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on with that. There's another brand of a cool mysis flake that I found. And NPS really like it. The flake food.
Oh, really?
But don't overdo it too much. You know, it can kind of sit there.
Wasn't PE mysis they had a bad batch? Because they collect like once a year, and they had a bad batch that they collected, so I think that kind of bombed them out for the year.
Yeah, I've heard that,
Right.
but I'm not sure. And I'm not sure what's happened the last couple of years. Because I used to get a 5-gallon pail of flake and then use that for 2 or 3 years. And then the next time I went to get that, I couldn't get it. So I feed that. And, you know, there's over there, which you can't see because my camera is not showing that. Ooh, am I okay? You still hearing me?
Yeah, we're still
yeah,
hearing you.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
You're just
Uh-oh.
you're just frozen.
I'm frozen, but I'll keep talking.
Okay.
Look at, I look
So-
weird. I got a bunch of different foods, so I just mix them up, and then I like frozen foods as well. So I use a lot of Hikari mysis because I like the size. The PE mysis are much bigger, and I use
Ooh, we might be losing you a bit there, Richard.
and I use Larry's Reef Frenzy. You know, whatever else I try out.
Okay.
Wow, feeding coral flake food. Huh. I never think about that.
Yeah, is it because it gives off like oils or something perhaps, and that immediate release of something just excites them? I don't know.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I have
it's, big
the
trouble, eh?
cool mysis flake. Somebody gave me some. I've been feeding that to my fish. Huh. But that flake seems to pollute the tank really quickly.
Right.
Then your nutrient level rise up very fast by feeding those cool mysis flake. Oh, we lost Richard.
You lost him.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll see if he comes
must
back
be the
in.
California thing.
That's always been my experience with like flake or pellet or anything like that. It's very nutrient dense, so you can, you know, unless you got good nutrient export, you know, you don't want to overdo it, and it's
Yeah.
easy to if you don't understand it.
Yeah, I've
Yeah, my
always
cat
preferred
is
pellet
going
over
after
flake.
that piece of beef. Ah,
I can't believe you bought a whole bloody sirloin steak in just to make a joke. Is that a pot roast for tonight? Is it?
that actually is I think it's called a London boil. I never know
Yeah,
why
I
you
think
call
I've
London
never-
boil. It's something to do with London, right? England. I don't know. It's just one cut of beef that called a London boil. I think nice marbling. Huh.
It looks good.
Pretty juicy and very cheap. Very cheap. Yeah, like $4.99 a pound, US dollar. That's dirt cheap.
Not too
Yeah.
bad. There's your local
Yeah.
butchers being flooded after this. So how about if we're talking about coral spawning, guys? So obviously Richard's done that. Oh, he's back now.
I'm back.
He's back. Yeah, back.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm back
I'll
on a
just continue
different camera.
I'll just
Okay,
continue that
good.
question. So Richard's doing the coral spawning thing. You guys both have coral sale facilities. What's stopping places like yourselves from sort of having a little go at spawning corals? Is it just a space and investment thing, or long-term thing, or just cheaper to import at the moment? Like what's
For me, it's not, you know, like, so we're building, you know, we have like a little bit of a, you know, business model trying to, you know, aquaculture corals and everything. So I'm not so much focused on spawning as I am, you know, just kind of growing out brood stock of what we have here. Maybe, you know, we've my wife and I have definitely, you know, talked about it. You know, when we get a little bit more room that's feasible to use, you know, we would love to have like a dark room and then be able to do coral spawning in there. But until then, we're just maximizing space because we're doing it at a home, and every square inch has got to be making money. You know, essentially, you got to pay rent or pay mortgage.
I think
you're
there
right.
is a question I see from the chart. Actually, I had the same question. Is that the babies coming from the spawning, do they carry the same color pattern as the parents?
That was a good
Sometimes.
question we had from Rama, actually, exactly along that line. How do they develop? From Kumar. How do they develop? Do they look like the parents, or does captivity change them?
They look like the parents. I mean, you know, their colors. There's different colors in the genetics, and it depends on what symbionts they uptake affects the colors. But I don't, you know, we could crossbreed intentionally at some point for things we want. But captivity doesn't really make them anything different. I would caution anybody with a farm who wants to do this. This is a whole thing if you want to do it as, for sale. And it's probably a 3-year before you get any return process. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's a lot of work. But I'm hoping, the million monkeys in the hobby get a hold of it and start tinkering with it. We tinker with everything and come up with all kinds of cool stuff. So that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you guys
the next thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some places that are doing it. REEF in Germany.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's all in tank. What's going on in Monsoon is got they're using stuff from the wild as well, which is not cheating, but it is different. So you learn different things. Did you guys talk about nutrients and flake food? Did I hear that as my cameras exploded?
A little bit.
We did.
We put a flag in that. Put a flag in that. We'll get back to it.
Yes, this one question here. So, how old do the colonies have to be before they'll spawn?
I've had colonies that were 3 years old spawn. So I've got back here, which you get. Actually, what you're looking at there behind me is Acropora hyacinthus, and that's F1. And I have babies from a spawn from them, so I have F2 babies.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Nice.
Awesome. So sorry, back to the we was talking as you disappeared about nutrients coming out of flake food and pellet food. Maybe I suggested perhaps is it the lipid content or fat content that comes off, or the oils that create polyp extension, or they're actually eating flake? Because honestly I've never heard of corals eating flake before. That's new to me. That's cool.
I don't know if the SPS are eating flake, but the NPS and the LPS will eat flake. I've got a time lapse somewhere of some dendros eating flake food, and it's pretty fun.
Wow.
Yeah. But for food, I think kitchen sink it. Feed them everything. It's and with nutrients, I think you gotta. I'm not so scared of nutrients. In the last paper that we published that I was on about coral spawning, they put a thing in about the what the parameters were. This is what we did, and the phosphate was 0.9 in the spawning tank. So the coral spawned at 0.9. The larvae developed at 0.9. They settled at 0.9. They grew at 0.9. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing. And reviewer number 2, if you don't do it, reviewer number 2 is always a jackass. Was like, wrote us a whole lesson about, what to do about phosphate. And it was like, we don't care. The point is all of this happened at what most people think is a death level of nutrients.
Now, was that for LPS, SPS?
It was for acros.
Acros. Okay. All right.
Acros.
Interesting.
And I've never cared so much about my systems with the nutrient levels. I think you got to feed, right? You can't. I think it's unconscionable to not feed the baby because you don't want to change diapers. And I think that's the same thing with our animals. And I think nutrients don't have much to do with algal growth. I think algae is too good at life and will grow at almost no nutrient levels anyway. And so I kind of think you want to feed, and you could do some stuff, you could do some things about it, but I don't think you need to freak out about it.
Oh, I mean, to your point, I got my LPS system in the living room. It flashes 0.9 on the Hannah checker. I mean, granted, it's an LPS system,
right?
The best it's ever looked was above 0.9.
Right. Oh, that's a great point, because corals are all different from each other, and we always try to throw a mixed reef and make everything work together. It kind of doesn't.
Yeah,
but it kind of does.
Guess what? The phosphate level at my LPS system right now?
What is it?
Guess.
700.
Phosphate?
Yeah, phosphate.
Phosphate content of fish oil.
3 ppm.
3.0. Not 0.3.
Wow.
3.
No, 3.0, and everybody grows like gangbusters.
Yeah.
And then the Hammer Duncan, the polyp is big and fat and fluffy. And they grow so well. And then because I have so many cleanup crew there that like the fish, I'm not talking about snail and crabs that basically doesn't do that much. But I have so many tanks, foxface, the mobile cleanup critters. And they basically, I do see algae. Yeah, then, but I
But so what?
Yeah, your tank is probably just your tank is probably just so mature in the bacteria and everything else that it's reading the level, but it's probably just processing. It's so balanced.
But
well, because I'm pumping the phosphate up artificially.
Yep.
I'll say
the reason is that I went to a friend's house. He has a system, growing LPS, and his phosphate is off the chart. But then he saw the growth and how fluffy, how puffy, how big those LPS polyps are. So keep it like that. So I said, let me measure your phosphate. I measure phosphate. The sulfur test kit is darker than the darkest one. There's no way you can see what the heck it is. So then I come home and say, well, I want to duplicate that. So think about this way is that 1 ppm of phosphate in 100 gallon, 400 liter tank is only amount to a bunch of salt. Just several dozen of salt, just like a salt blade. Salt, what? That's the amount of phosphate to reach 1 ppm in a 400 liter tank. It's very tiny. So I asked myself, if that small amount of like the sodium phosphate can damage coral, hell no. The coral evolution through the millions a year is wasted. That's not going to hurt the coral. There's no way.
So again, it's the why.
Amount of thing.
It's the why. So the first whys that I heard about phosphate was that it was bad for your tank would become a cesspool of algae if you had high phosphate. No,
it never happened.
And but that's what they told us, right? That was the common wisdom for 10 or 15, 20 years when we got a way to control phosphate. Before we had ROA on the market, no one cared about phosphate because you couldn't do anything about it, really, except for water changes, and that didn't really work. So why do you want to bring it down? So after it was algae, then it was, lower calcium skeletal density in your corals. And I'm not sure if I remember this number correctly, but when I looked at the papers that said that, the math ended up at being about 8% slower growth or 8% weaker or, something like that. And I went, I don't care about 8%. If I had a farm and I was growing, for money and I wanted to maximize, I would care more. But I think for me, it doesn't make much of a difference. And I think for most hobbyists, I think people drown themselves trying to do something about phosphate and nitrate.
Going back to the why then, I agree. I don't mind a bit of phosphate. I think it's free coral food and all the rest of it. Does it only work at those high levels in something like your tank, Don, where you've got it at 3 ppm? Does that only work because your nitrate is very high as well and the balance is still
no, the 3 ppm phosphate, the nitrate is 25 ppm.
Okay. So
but I didn't do it to my SPS system because I'm such a I don't have the gut to do it on my SPS system yet. But I do move many SPS into that LPS system. They grow like gangbusters. And also I remember that the 1970s paper about the phosphate. So I'm a man that like to dig up pattern, dig up paper. I dug it up. I look at it. I read it. So this famous paper about phosphate, about poisoning the chrysolates, about the bone forming, it actually said hypothesis. No, they didn't come to a conclusion. It just hypothesized about the high phosphate level can weaken the bone, the density of the coral become more fragile. And then after that, well, in the 90s, there's several papers to debunk that. There is actually there's even a paper did a laboratory test with 3 systems: 0 phosphate, I forget about like 0.5, 0.3, and then 1 ppm phosphate with a fast growing SPS in it. So it turns out the growth rate of the coral, the SPS, is proportional to the phosphate level.
Right. And so
yes.
Go on. Finish your thoughts.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So what happened is that on a higher phosphate level tank, the bone density definitely is slightly lower.
Yeah.
Not a lot lower. Because they grow faster. That's what it is. And then there's a paper talk about on the reef, the natural reef slope. They found out that at a higher phosphate level area due to the runoff from the land, agriculture, that's the most majority of the runoff coming from agriculture. So the coral definitely have a lower density of the bone structure, but with the lower density, for them to withstand the natural wave, everything is nothing. They just grow faster. They grow faster. That's why the skeleton is more porous. But it's not like.
There is an element of truth to that. There is a scientific fact on phosphate inhibition on calcium deposition. So I work in water treatment, and how we treat steam boilers is we dose phosphate as what we call a sludge conditioner. Sludge conditioning means that we dose phosphate between 50 and 70 ppm to prevent calcium carbonate formation, limescale, right? However, we're dosing 50 to 70 ppm when there's only about 20 to 40 ppm of calcium present. So you've got a dose a ton more phosphate than there is calcium for that actually to have an effect. When we're talking about even your massive 3 ppm level of phosphate, you've got 450, 400 ppm of calcium in your tank. It's going to do pretty much nothing.
And in terms of poisoning the crystal lattice, so I read a paper. I forget where I cannot find it again, but I remember it is that the experiment actually have to be heavily dosed an ungodly amount of phosphate in order to have that happen. So talk about 5 ppm, 3 ppm, 2 ppm, 1 ppm, or 0.5. That's nothing. Seriously, if that can alter the coral or actually alter your algae growth, the evolution is crap. It doesn't happen that way. People just overemphasize it.
I think what Terrell said was bang on. It's your that biome of that tank is probably adapted to those nutrient levels. So whatever goes in is dealt with, right? I think the stability, as people keep saying in chat, stability is key for me. What you want your curve flat. You just don't want it going up and down all over the place, because that's when you get your problems, right? So, I mean, look, I'm not an expert. Don't take my word for it, but I think your phosphate is a bit of a non-issue these days. Ask me 10 years ago, I'll be like, pitch for zero. Yeah. Not anymore.
And I think it's easier, when you're differentiating, if you're talking with somebody a little bit newer in the hobby and you're talking with somebody that's had experience and they can understand the whys, for instance. When you're talking with somebody newer, it's easier just to tell them, hey, stay between 0.1 and 0.3, just because they're not going to have the grasp of what a mature system will do. And we're over here talking, saying, man, 1, 3, those numbers their tank would not handle those numbers at that point, because their biological base is not handling it. So it's almost easier just to tell a newbie, like, stay within, give them a reefing recipe and tell them to follow reefing recipe until they can understand the why, and then they can kind of go into tweaking it here and there.
Yeah, and a big part of my startup recipe for a new reefer is just leave it alone for 3 months. Because if you start messing with it there, you've got no stability at all, and then you're just swing yourself into hell, and then they come and they say, what do I do? And it's like, I don't even start again. You've flipped it so many times. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, we're getting into the realms now of modern equipment and modern reef keeping. Our tanks are too clean. They've never been so clean.
Speak for yourself.
You know what I mean? We've got roller mat filters, we've got advanced skimmers, we've got GFO, we've got all these products available to us. We overfilter our tanks, and everyone wants that gin clear clarity all the time, and everyone wants a detritus-free base, and our tanks are too clean. Like when I set this 8-foot tank up behind me, my reefing guru Paul at AAC, he said, you know, I filled it up with RODI water, salted it, and goes, you need to get a bit of crap in there. Put 10 litres of tap water in there. Just to get some nitrate and phosphate to kickstart everything. They're too clean off the bat. I didn't fit the reef mat for 4 months. I didn't turn the skimmer on for the first month. Just let it cook.
Yep.
And yes, you're going to get an ugly phase, but even if you put all that stuff on, all you're doing is kicking that down the line a little bit. You're going to get that ugly phase. Just let it burn. Let it go through it.
A guy who inspired me to get into SPS was a local reefer around here, and his setup with a sump was no filter socks, no filter floss, just a skimmer, no rocks, nothing, absolutely bare sump, and just a skimmer. And you can see what some of the best SPS I've ever seen grow, and it grew like weeds.
Yeah, I don't do mechanical filtration unless I have a why for it. Because it's so much work. Also, I think, you know, unless you're changing I like the roller filters if you're going to make me do, because it takes the stuff out constantly. If you change your socks once a week, you might as well stop using them, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah, what I think.
Yeah. Do you have an answer for this one? From a question from Reef Nurse. Would you have the same coral growth with your nitrate being high along with the phosphate? Or is it just stability that is the answer?
I think it's probably just stability, because my nitrate used to run, you know, when I did the first phosphate talk and paper, it was like 2014. And I think I ran 60 to 80 nitrate and, you know, whatever it was, a phosphate 1.2 at the time. And, you know, I think you probably see some slower growth, but what are you doing that you care about the growth? If you got a tank at your house, who cares how quick it grows? I mean, really, you probably have other things to think about than how quick, you know, you're probably, I guess at some point you want to start messing with stuff to make coral grow, but that's going to be a couple of years into the system.
I think everybody just wants to see results, you know, we're impatient.
Yeah. And, you know, if you're going to be impatient, you know, get some seeded live rock and you can start an Insta tank that way. You're still going to have issues because they're just going to be slightly different. But there's really no, man, I just like to let things cook. Boom. Just, you know, sometimes I don't clean the glass of my display for a month. And then I go and I clean it. And I'm like, oh, it is pretty.
Oh, wow.
That's exciting. Look at what changed, you know, because now I'm really looking at it. A lot of these, but it depends on what you're in the hobby for, right? So that's why, excuse me, look at that earthquake. That's why I use the other camera. That's what I'm remembering. What you're in the hobby for. If you're in it for a lark and for a good time, it just doesn't matter.
Sure.
I had something better, but I distracted myself.
I think you hit a very good point, is that this because of our hobby. So if we keep all the major parameters in check, and the coral already growing fast enough, and actually the last mile, we're spending so much frustration, so much energy, so much money, listen to so many advertisements, but you're chasing the last 5%.
Right. And who cares?
And also when you chase the last 5%, you can crash the 95%.
Right. It's also like, you know, what are you spending your time doing? You know, I'm, you know, so many people are excited about the idea of never doing a water change. And it's like, well, how much money are you spending on excuses to not do a water change, right? You know, how many elements are you adding? How many dosers are you buying? How many filters are you buying? You know, if you just did a water change, you'd probably get the same effect and your life would be easier and you wouldn't have to be, you know, curating all this other equipment. But, you know, at the same time, I totally love people who are chasing the numbers like that, who have mature tanks and are trying to figure stuff out. It takes all kinds in the hobby. There's not one brush. I think there's another concept that I like to use that it's come to mind for a couple things we've talked about, and that's the mind story. And the idea of a mind story, it's not a negative, it's just a descriptor. People take it as, some people use it as, oh, that's just a mind story, and that's not how it's used. So the phosphate thing about the skeletal growth, you know, you read it in a paper and it seems to make some kind of sense, but it's really a mind story because we haven't tested it for our use. And so, you know, 10 years ago, if your phosphate wasn't 0.03, people thought you were crazy, you know, and the range was 0.03 to 0.08, right? And now it's changed from 0.03 to 2.0. So I think that's how we get past the mind story phase and see, does this idea we have, whatever it is, you know, when you pull one thing out of a paper and try to apply it to our tanks, it doesn't necessarily transfer over. So we want to, I mean, you need to start somewhere, but we also, it's very difficult to go, I read this in a paper, so I'm doing it for my tank, and have that really mean that it's really going to mean something, you know. All the bacteria that people are growing for food and stuff, they make sense on paper why you'd want to do that. But I keep saying, show me that it does something in a tank for our animals. You show me a result. It doesn't have to be a peer-reviewed result, but, you know, show me two tanks side by side. One it uses it and one it doesn't, and let me see. And they go, why don't you do that test? It's like, because you're selling the product. You should do that test.
But even if we had that example, and, like, you know, my tank, the four of us here, we'll put an experiment tank together, and I dosed product A, B, C, and D, and whatever. Even if we both dose the same product, we'd get different effects because our tanks are entirely different ecosystems, entirely different setups, different equipment. Do you know what I mean? There's too many variables to just say A plus B equals C. It doesn't happen. There's no such simple thing in our, and that's what makes the hobby interesting. Like, you know, how you do something is completely opposite way I do something, but yet we might get the same result, and that's interesting to me. You know, like, how does that work? The why, back to the why.
Yeah, I think that's critical too, because that was one of the things that got me looking at phosphate. Besides that, I stopped paying attention and my tank was still doing fine. But it was, you know, people would say, I have low phosphate and look how great it is. And it's like, that's the way to do it. And I would say, well, there's at least 50% of the people without low phosphate and their tanks are awesome as well. So it can't be one or the other, because all different mythologies get the same results. So something else is going on that we don't know about, and we haven't figured out yet. And I think that makes sense.
Exactly.
The coral reef ecosystem is insanely complex. And, you know, and this is even weirder. All my tanks are the same body of water, right? If I do a biomics test on them, different tanks, they get different results. They're different biomes in different tanks, even though all the water is the same. So there's some local factors that matter as well. So it's really fascinating.
But I guess the kind of proof in everything we just said about nutrient levels is the craze of the ultra low nutrient system seems to have died out as quick as it came about, right? Who does that anymore? Yeah.
No one. But right, no one. And the zeolite, the zeovit system, right?
Yeah, same thing.
I think I'm starting to feel like a lot of these fads come from the selling of a product to take advantage to that's supposed to do something, because people want to feel like they're doing something, and I totally get that. That's why I made Reef SIBO. Do I have one? Reef SIBO. Here, it's a you know, you just add a few drops of it.
I have one too.
Nice, exactly. It's the same thing. Mine's proprietary.
Mine's drinkable.
I just tell everybody I pee in the tank, and
hey,
no, I really don't.
You could be onto something there. There is the thing really recently about ammonia being the best nitrate uptake.
What was it? Chris Meckler was saying it. He tells everybody to go pee in the tanks in there. Feed the tanks.
I'm not gonna. I think I feed a lot. I feed so much that I don't think I need to. Because when the urea and the ammonia dosing came out, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I thought about it. I was like, I am dumping so much food in this tank that it's got to convert. Either it's being eaten or it converts to ammonia right away. So that's when I went, no, Rich, bad Rich. There's no reason for you to dose this because you're not even going to know if it did anything unless everything dies.
Well, look, Terrell's lowered the bar here now, talking about pee and urine and whatever. I'm gonna go a little bit off tangent and ask you about another side of the hobby that you've got a bit of a name for, and that is in cephalopod keeping.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
This hobby is not as varied as it is unique. It's amazing. I mean, cephalopods, they're not really sold because, let's face it, not many of us could maintain them and keep them, but you have done. So yeah, tell us a bit about that if you can, Rich.
Yeah, they're really amazing animals. And they're not for the faint of heart for several reasons. They need a specialized environment. So you really do need to do things differently for them. They do seem to care about water quality, some ammonia especially, but leave that alone. And they only live a year or so.
Oh,
so
interesting.
If and in some cases, I think that's actually a good thing. I get a new pet in a year, not because I killed it, but because it came to the end of its life. But they're really neat. When I started with cephs, they were being imported too much. Octopus for sure, and that's changed over time, which makes me happy. The idea of these are not cut flower animals. We've also seen like a reduction in obligate coral feeders coming into the hobby. You don't see them as much because they don't live, and I think that's great. So I think cephalopods are fantastic. If you have questions about keeping a cephalopods, Tonmo, TONMO.com, the Octopus News magazine online. It's got all kinds of information over there, and the people will help you over there, and it's great. It is a specialized thing. So you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. Yeah.
When we talk about captive cephalopods, are we talking the things we tend to see when they do crop up are things like flamboyant cuttlefish, and I've seen mimic octopus available before, and then we do get the occasional Octopus vulgaris, which is I think just our Mediterranean common octopus we get not too far from here. So I've seen all those. They don't get too big. From my understanding, they like a lot cooler water, which is one of the limiting factors. But I mean, look, again, other than that, I don't know. They're obviously, they pique everyone's interest. Like there's other horrible things we see in industry, like shark eggs and things, which should never be sold. But it's that little thing you go into a shop and I've never seen that before, and tell me about it. So I think I'm not trying to say none of us could ever keep them, and I don't want to come across as snobby or put people off because it is very difficult. But if there is going to be something people to try as like an advanced aquarist for a project, is there a suitable candidate?
A vulgaris is a good candidate because they aren't tiny and they're pretty robust. But the main problem with octopus, and that my home lab used to be for octopus breeding before it was converted to corals, and cuttles, is getting one that you actually want. That's very hard because no one really collects them. In fact, I actually had a collector go to the Philippines, and I said, "Go to this spot and get me these octopus," and they gave me something else. Which was terrible. So I think they shouldn't be a casual buy. I don't have a problem with people wanting them. And I think, you shouldn't walk into the store and go, octopus. I think you should go to the store and go, can you get me an octopus? Collect to order rather than a supermarket.
Yeah. And hopefully they'll get a bit of vetting and they'll ask you some questions about setups and all the rest of it.
Yeah, right. And let's face it, you should know what you're doing. It's a weird animal that can do weird things and is going to try to climb out. And if you don't want that to happen, and you don't want it to go in, become an octopus puree into your pumps, you need to. There's things you need to do.
Right.
I don't want to stop anybody from doing anything or getting any of these animals. But I would like it to be considered. rather than impulse.
Yeah. So how did you get into that? Was that just your interest? Was it? Or
Oh man,
you was researching them or?
The coolest. You don't see it. I got like monsters all over my office here in my lab. I love monsters. I've loved monsters since I was a kid. And we didn't know what to do with octopuses, in the 80s. And so I actually did a lot of work with cephalopods. I got a wonder puss, and I got a lot of grief for getting it. But I didn't just get a wonder puss. I was like, okay, I want a wonder puss. What do I think they need? And so I looked at where they come from. And so I made a custom substrate for them because I know they dig. And, I octopus proofed the tank so they can't get out. I made sure I had live foods to feed them because I don't know if they're going to take any kind of prepared foods. And, I was able to keep that thing alive for 9 or 10 months, which was an unheard of amount of time at the time. And it dug a burrow. It did all kinds of naturalistic behaviors that we weren't seeing. And that actually probably is what put my foot in the scientific world. I went, oh, and people were like, oh, you did that. I was like, yeah, I can keep stuff alive. And it's really cool. But it wasn't just, I saw it and, let's put it in a tank and see what it does. Yeah, they're really cool. They live a year and then they die horribly.
So they all live a year? Is there some of them live longer?
The tropical ones live about a year. Plus, if you get an octopus through the trade, you have no idea how old it is. And this is the problem mostly with flamboyants as well. People thought flamboyants were super hard to keep. It's like if you get, a 12-month-old cuttlefish, it's only got at most, 5 months left, 8 months left. And 3 of those are going to be as it rots in front of your face while it's still alive. The worst Alzheimer's that's ever happened. So it's a tragic ending.
I think from watching all the David Attenborough programs and stuff, that as soon as an octopus has mated and laid its eggs, then it just stays with it and just withers away. Basically, is that the case?
Some species are like that. Most species are like that. And that's generally just the female. Generally, the males can mate more than once. But this octopus, the larger Pacific striped octopus, and the lesser Pacific striped octopus are what is called idiroporous, which means they have, they lay multiple clutches of eggs over time. They eat while they're brooding. So they're very different. In fact, they're so weird that Arcadio Ronice, who first observed this behavior, wrote a paper on them and got such a bad, mean peer review that he left science.
Really?
And then it turned out that we were able to get some finally, 20, 30 years later and confirm everything that he showed. So there's a lot of variation and we don't know. There's not enough octopus research.
Fair.
How about those giant one?
The GPOs, generally the colder the octopus, the longer it lives. So giant Pacific octopus live 5 to 7 years.
That's it?
Yeah, where the tropicals live 1 to 2 years. No, you want them to die at 5 to 7 years because if they kept living, they'd take over.
Yeah, super intelligent. Do you
wow?
Random question for you, Rich. Do you eat seafood? Would you eat octopus, or is it off the menu now?
I would eat it. I don't like the taste of it, but I would eat it. If you eat pork, you should have no ethical qualm about eating octopus. I think.
Yeah,
responsibly caught pork. They're smart, but a pig, I think, is demonstrably smarter, and we have no problem torturing to death en masse so we can have bacon.
It's lovely succulent pigs. Yeah.
Bacon.
Cards on the table. I love seafood. I love eating. Octopus is one of my favorites when you go to the Mediterranean. Love it. However, I'm quite happy the fact that they've come up with this ban now in I think it's just in Europe that octopus farms no longer allowed to exist. They're deemed as intelligent animals and you can't farm them anymore.
Yeah,
because they were farmed in bad conditions.
I'm okay with that, but nobody's really farming them. I guess they are. Yeah, because they to raise an octopus from a baby to edible size is a pain in the ass. I'm not going to have a. We want to get into ethics. I have a philosophy degree, so this is a terrible place to put me. I don't know what to think about the ban on it. I feel like it's an emotional reaction, and I think if people are going to ban octopus farming, they should ban pig farming as well, and that's never going to happen. So I would like it to be evenly applied, not just to the animal du jour that we think is charismatic and we should treat it well.
100%. All the floppy, cute animals get protected more than slimy, wet ones. That's just fact, right?
Right. And the octopus fits somewhere in between that. They're so weird that people think they're cool, but when they touch them, they go, "Eee."
Well, talk about banning. What exactly happening is Hawaii now?
Hawaii. I don't keep a good thumb on what's happening with Hawaii, but it looks like that industry is about to open up again. Or they have approved it, but they haven't given out permits yet. And I'm not sure really what's going on there. The most interesting thing I think about the Hawaii ban was that what happened when we couldn't get animals from Hawaii. Pretty much the market didn't care. It's like, and that's kind of what we thought. It's like, because I think as much as we like to say that consumers drive the market, consumers can only buy what's available. And if something's not available, people lose interest in trying to get it. So, would I like an inexpensive Potter's Angel again? You bet. But my life's not over because I can't, there's a lot of other fish I can get. But I think Hawaii should open up again. I think the fishery is really well managed and well understood. And, I think those are good animals to collect.
So I heard that Indo was closed down. Is closing down?
I heard something about that, but I'm not sure what's going on. I haven't had time or reason to track it down yet.
Talking about the Indo coral ban?
Yeah, you know about it?
So Indonesia is going through a governmental change right now. So they have about a 2-month handover period in which they're stopping exports, and then they're redoing all their CITES permits, and then they'll again. So we got about a 2-month
So they're just temporary.
Yeah, it's not a ban. It's just more of a pause.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
We're really struggling with Indo at the minute over here, with Indo imports, because of the whole flight restrictions around the Middle East. So getting Indo stuff over here is a pain in the arse at the minute.
Right.
Yeah, so I would imagine.
That 2-month hiatus for us isn't such a bad thing, actually, because I can't get them anyway. But yeah, that's
yeah, I think I'm coming over there next month. And I'm interested to see what's affected by my stupid country doing stupid things.
Where's this? To the UK or to the Middle East?
I think I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say about it yet. But we are coming to UK because we're going to go to Interzoo.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the plan is yet, but I think now we're flying into London, and then I don't know how long we're there before we fly over there. So I don't know what's going on yet. But I think we're coming. It'd be neat to see people if you're around, and we can make it happen.
You'll have to keep in touch, Richard, because I can show you around a few places around London. 100%.
Awesome.
That's cool. Have you been over here before?
When I was a kid. When the Wombles were a thing.
The Wombles
are the Wombles are a thing? Yeah. No,
they were. We've probably alienated half of our listeners here because
I'm 117 years old.
How old is Ben Johnson then?
Ben Johnson is 253.
So I went off on a bit of a tangent there with the octopus cephalopod thing, just because I find it fascinating that you was involved with that as well. So your career or your path where you are now has been as varied as it has been intricate, I suppose. So that led up to all your successes, coral spawning, working in the trade, wholesale, all the rest of it. All led up to you getting a pretty cool thing, right? Oh, let me put this one on. There we go.
Oh yeah, I got an award.
So talk us about what, for those of us in the UK that aren't familiar with this, what is a MASNA award? I think, is it still called that or has it changed? But
it's well, MASNA no longer exists. MASNA has collapsed, and that's a shame. There's a new conference. It's not a show that I'm involved in called Reef Retreat that is capturing the same kind of brain trust that used to happen at MACNA. So we'll see how that goes. But MASNA was the Marine Aquarium Societies of North America, is what it was called, even though it was an international organization. And it put on a huge show, like ridiculously huge show, every year somewhere around the States. And they gave out awards. And one of the awards was called the Aquarist of the Year, which then got changed to the MASNA Award, but I think Aquarist of the Year sounds better. And I was awarded that in 2014 or 2015, not just for the husbandry stuff, but I think mostly for the skeptical reef keeping stuff I was doing at the time.
So that's the articles you used to write, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me.
Okay. Epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yep. The skeptical reef keeping is where I know about you. But reading your article, hey, this guy Rich Ross, interesting. He's speaking something that is actually quite true.
Thank you.
As a scientist.
I looked at some of those articles again recently, like with the eye of, should I repurpose them? And I was like, I don't really need to change anything, which made me a little sad because I was like, how is it that we're still people are still recommending ginger to treat ick? So it's interesting.
Garlic, right?
Garlic
or ginger?
Garlic, at least you can look at garlic from over here and see a possible mind story about why. But ginger, there's just no support for. But I'm trying to be more relaxed about it and find it all interesting. I think it's fascinating that the hobby grinds through the same ideas every 10 years. And I think we grind through them a little faster each time, but the people need to learn all this stuff. It's our hobby is so experiential. It's very hard to book learn it. So, these ideas come back and then they come back it's really interesting when they come back for a couple of months. Nano bubbling came back for a couple of weeks once. And then it was like, then somebody found all the reading about it in the past. I'm like, oh, no, no, it doesn't really do that. So
the nano bubble is coming back?
What is?
The nano bubble is coming back as a fact?
It was. It reared its head, but then it went back to sleep.
Was you writing all these articles with your professional biologist hat on or your hobbyist hat on?
It was at that time. It's with my philosophy and hobbyist hat. But I mean, it's all one thing. I think for me, that's the thing that's interesting. We throw all this stuff in my head, and then I do something with it that I don't even necessarily know what I'm pulling on. But we talk, some of the articles were about just general critical thinking, because I think that's a thing we don't have enough of in general, and we certainly didn't have enough of it in the hobby before. I think there's more of it now, which is nice. But the hobby keeps growing, so we keep getting people who come in without it, which is, that's just how the world works. And then, we did some stuff about ethics, which I thought was interesting, which is directly related to the philosophy stuff. And then all of that kind of came together with like when Chris Maupin and I did that skeptical reefing about ICP testing, which I also think was like in 2015, 2016. It's a 3 years there where lots was happening. And I just think all that stuff's really interesting without, we need to think it through and look at it as wide as we can.
Well, look, you never learn anything from standing still and being part of the status quo, do you? You learn stuff when you explore these boundaries, right? And that's in everything we do, not just reefing, but in life and everything.
Yeah.
On the ethics side of things, we could do hours on ethics, because I think everyone's
good.
Got valid opinions on what is and what is not. In the UK, we've got, and I'm a bit outnumbered here, but in the UK, we've got quite a lot of pushes from a lot of groups, particularly north of the border in Scotland, that basically want to outlaw not just fish keeping, but pet keeping on a large scale.
Yeah.
They're all getting, they all seem to be getting quite a lot of airtime at the minute, and it seems to be becoming bigger and bigger. I mean, what's it like in the States? Have you got these same groups trying to push for the same things, or are they just sort of shot to the back of the room?
We've got them, and I keep saying if we don't police ourselves, somebody else is going to police us, and we're not going to like it. And this is one of those kind of non-typical brain things where my brain keeps coming up with, we better be careful here or we're screwed. And I have the feeling that I'll be right about this one. If I don't get in the way of my brain, I'm often right about that kind of thing. And when I watch what's happening, in the UK and in Europe, it'll be harder to have it happen here. But that's the kind of thing that's happening in Hawaii. Part of the reason why Hawaii is shut down is because people are like, don't take our fish. It's like that. But we're not even taking them from where anyone is, and it's fine. Here's the data. So it gets, I lost track of what I was saying.
I think you get generalized pushback for people that don't necessarily know the deeper parts of this hobby. Like I've always said, my wife was never into this hobby before, and I use her as an example because I always say we got to be good reef keeping ambassadors, because to people like my wife, where if she knows nothing about this hobby and she has a generalized, her initial thing was, hey, I don't think we should be taking wild animals off the reef and doing this. Well, when I'm explaining to her the positives that can come out of it, breeding in captivity, aquaculture, things like that, now the idea starts opening up to her that there's good in this hobby and there's not all bad. But if she continues just to see people do ethically bad things, then that's gonna just kind of shut her down to it and be like, you know what? No, I don't like the hobby.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This is where I get worried. Right? So in the UK, where it is getting quite a bit of a voice now, so I go all around the country with work, and wherever I'm working, I'll look up the nearest shop and I'll go and have a look in the shop. And even if it's a freshwater shop, I'll go and look at an aquatic space. And this is what I was getting back to earlier about octopuses and banded cat sharks still in eggs and things like that. You go into a shop and see those in tanks for sale to anyone. I've even seen a blue-ringed octopus for sale a couple of years back. No, just on display. So 100%, if people like that get wind of it, they've got a massive case in their hands, right? I kind of agree with what they're doing. But so I think all our retailers, like you just said, so have to be like ethically minded, that doing the best practices, the best health control and everything to sort of keep our jacket clean, if that makes sense, It's just that's what worries me. That's what that does worry me. But it's good to see that maybe the US hasn't got such a big issue, and maybe we're just our media can be very focused at times, and it seems to be getting quite a bit of focus at the minute.
Yeah, I think over here, if it happens, it'll happen like a hammer. It won't be slow. It'll happen. Every couple of years, there's legislation to shut things down statewide and nationally. It is happening, and we don't have anything really over here. We got Penn, the Pet Advocacy Network. There's a new group, but we don't have and those are just legal things, but we don't have, a centralized body to recommend best practices. We don't have, any of that. Starts with the importers. I think it doesn't just start with the importers. I think it starts with all of us. I think we have to move together as a group. I think for too long we've been going, it's the importers, and the importers go, it's the hobbyists, and the hobbyists say it's the stores, and the stores say it's the importers, and the importers say it's the collectors, and it's all of us. We're all going to suffer somehow if we don't do it. And every time we've tried to start a thing up over here, the industry has just eaten it and killed it ripped it out of the womb and stomped on it.
I hate to use the word influencers, but we are all influencing in such a way, but I know it's really silly to throw the word around, but then again, when you kind of take a step back and you look at, the position that we're in sitting on this screen, you got people that are coming in this hobby that know nothing about it. And this is the first bit of information they're getting. So, you got to be able to, feed them the correct information, get them going in the right direction, or else it's very easy for them to get lost in that whole sea storm of poo.
Yeah, the signal to noise is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of when it comes along, if we get regulated out, most people will just move on to a different hobby. Because for 80% of people who keep the animals we keep, this is a true statistic that came out of my butt. 80%, it's just a hobby, and they'll go on to the next hobby.
I think the reason why they pick on us I'd say all exotic pet keepers, so reptile keepers, fish keepers, the reason they pick on us is because it's seen as an ornamental industry. We're not keeping a cat that we can stroke and let out in the garden and stuff. We're keeping things in glass boxes for our own beautification of our homes, right? So they haven't really got a choice in the matter. One thing what I want to ask you, Rich, is with your philosophy and ethics background, is things we can say as hobbyists back to people when challenged. So one I always say, to start this off, is people will say to me, "Oh, those fish have been taken from the wild. They're never going to be able to breed." And I was like, "You've had your dog's nuts chopped off."
Yeah.
So that's my comeback. So have you got anything a bit more polite, maybe, that I can use?
I think just don't talk to those people. You don't need
All that.
You don't need that negativity in your life. What do they say? Hit me with their question. They say, "Oh, it's been taken out of the wild. It's not going to breed."
Yeah, you take that wild.
Yeah, but there's lots of other ones in the wild that are going to breed. We're not taking the last whatever the fish is, pulling it out of the, most of our hobby, most of our collectors are not nefarious, and they know if they take all the fish, then they will have no job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just not. I understand your concern, but it's not really what's happening. Also, if you really care about life in the oceans, we're not doing the damage. You want to talk to somebody else. You want to talk to many other industries. It's not us. You just look at us because we have animals in a tank and you can see them.
Yeah, ethically, it's fine with me in the fact that I know that, say, for example, that is an Achilles tank swimming behind me. Beautiful fish. If it wasn't in this tank and captive for how many years, that's probably been on someone's plate by now, or it's been predated on, or whatever. And I can also say that if that fish gets a disease or an ailment, I can treat it. I can medicate it. It'll never have that in the wild. I know we're going off a little bit here, but I use all these sorts of things as counter arguments when some people have these conversations. They get the best care, they get best diet, there's no predation threat, and I think all that. The fact that there is one in captivity, that people can see, means that they don't have to take another one, or you know what I mean. It can be an educational piece, not in my tank, but in a sea life centre or a national aquarium or something.
I think. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, I think a lot to do. Actually, when I talk to many hobbyists and ask them what they actually want, for example, the fish, I do see the potential problem about people wanting this fish and that fish, and those fish are actually quite difficult to keep in an aquarium, and also they're all wild caught. So it's not exactly about the industry is catered to whatever the customer wants. So if somebody says I want a killer whale, if it's legal, right? but then if the market there, then somebody is going out to the ocean and grab a shamu back. that's very similar to this industry. Is that there's something I want the candy whatever angelfish, or whatever that thing is, the $20,000 fish. So
Peppermint angel.
So the peppermint angel, yeah. And those things only happen in the wild, so they're pretty rare. And also the chance to keep it alive in your aquarium probably is low because they come from a deep ocean. They need to decompress if that's the case. Yeah. So I think it's a lot of things. Also, we need to look at the customer level. Is that when a guy walk into a store, they buy whatever he can see, right? So the thing is that the education becomes so important. Is to let people know that what kind of fish actually is a little bit more ethical to keep than the other.
See, I think though, the education, people have been saying education since I got into the hobby in 1632, and it doesn't really play out. I don't think most people getting into the hobby are just getting into a cool hobby. They don't, they're not getting into having to figure out where their fish come from so they feel more ethical. So it's tough. And I think at the basis of it, we really don't have much of an ethical leg to stand on for keeping animals in glass boxes in our houses. I think we're doing it because we want to do it. And I think that's okay. I think trying to make it more than that is actually a little bit, it doesn't ring true to people. And I think that's why they kind of look at you a little askance when you try those kinds of tactics on it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the hobby. And I think, and at the same time, that's right. If you're worried about a fish in your tank, but look at how society all over the world treats fish. In any other circumstance, you could be on a boat, you could pull up a fish, you could throw it on the deck so it asphyxiates slowly in the sun for an hour, and then you nail it to a board while it's still twitching and take a picture of it, and everyone goes, "Yay, what a great fisher person you are." So it's really hard for me to go, we have an ethical responsibility to the animals. We do have an ethical responsibility to the animals, but I'm not sure really where it ends up, given how we treat animals in the rest of our society. If you've got something in your care, you should take care of it. But even with dogs and cats, how far does that go up? If your cat eats a bunch of hair bands and it's going to cost you $15,000 to get that removed from your cat, if you have the money and it doesn't hurt you, you'll spend it. If you don't have the money, that cat's not going to make it. And man, ethics is certainly an interesting place to go.
Yeah,
it wasn't my intention to do this sort of deep dive chat on ethics tonight, but it's fascinating.
It really is.
Do you think in the fish hobby, specifically the fish hobby, it's different between, say, freshwater and our marine fish? I.e., I can buy a goldfish for £2, but a marine fish is going to cost me what, 80 quid and upwards? I mean, maybe 30 quid to be cheap, but because they're a higher value fish, do we treat them better than £2 throwaway goldfish? Does that come into it? It's as sad as it is,
Yes and no. Because the reef, I would say reef keeping is more of a luxury hobby. Not that you can't do it on a budget, not that people can't do it, that way. I'm not saying that at all. But I think if you look around, you have to have some disposable income to be a reef keeper. So along with that comes being able to replace things that die. So practically, we just buy new stuff when stuff dies, right? So I mean, it gets a little sticky.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the family dog passes away, you might wait a couple of months. You might get another one. You know?
Yeah. No, exactly. But also because of the luxury hobby, you're more able to afford to replace that animal than if not. So, I've got no problem. I mean, but at the same time, I don't have a captive bred potter's angel because I don't want to spend $900 on that fish.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas if I could get it for $200, I would probably buy one. So price comes into it, but that's also because I've been in the hobby for 17,000 years, and I'm almost to the point where fish is a fish. They're all really interesting. Whatever's in that tank is going to be fun to watch.
If Richard Ross hasn't bred it, it's not worth keeping. That's where we're at, all right. There you go. How about have you ever bred any fish species?
I bred clownfish. I got baby rhinopeus to 17 days. I got pygmy seahorses with Matt Wendell to 126 days. I got ghost pipefish, kind of. God, I want another chance at ghost pipefish. We collected them ourselves and flew them home to the academy. So,
nice.
And the same thing with the pygmies. Getting these hard animals through the trade, right? Should be collect to order. If we want to do ethics again, if we get rid of the supermarket idea and collect to order, then you have to wait for them to actually catch the fish you want rather than hoping they've got it. That will shrink the hobby some because the hobby exists on impulse buys of people who are new. So
Absolutely correct. Yep.
It's a total quagmire. And that's why the education part fails, right? There are enough stores that need to make any sale that they either go out of business because they keep saying no to people, or they go out of business because they keep cutting their own ethics to eventually they don't know what they're doing anymore, and they just get out of it out of disgust.
My previous employer, this is 15, 20 years ago, works in an aquatic place, and people would come in and they'd want to buy like let's say a red-tailed catfish or an arowana, freshwater fish that grow monster tank sizes. And then I would be like, how big's your tank? How big is all this? What system you got? No, you can't have one. Can't sell you one. My boss at the time, who owned the store, was absolutely livid. He says, why are you refusing sales for? I was like, because they can't keep the fish. He goes, well, they're going to go next door and buy one, so sell it to them anyway.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Go next door and buy one. Yeah, that's the point.
Out of love with the hobby at that point. I was like, well, this is shit. This is not what I want to do. I don't want to sell people fish they can't keep. I don't want to give a death sentence away in a bag. That's not me. But that's like the commercial trade-off. It was like, oh, if you don't sell it to them, someone else will. And I was like, don't sit well with me, that one.
And at the same time, you went fishing for 24 hours the other day.
I go fishing. I eat seafood.
It's just to point out that it is such an amazing, complicated. People are all awesome and terrible at the same time.
Yeah.
And our hobby is really great, and it also feels like we're in a pretty decent time with the hobby. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of crazy illegal importation happening, although I do hear about some stuff from time to time. At least in the States. I can only talk about the States, and I'm only talking saltwater. And also I want to hope that that's the case, but again, we're just talking about how, I think we need a centralized body to help point to some certifications. Maybe I got no problem with certifications. If I had more time or a team or a bunch of money so I could do both of those things, I would be happy to try to just start such a organization. But I don't. It's hard, and I don't really have the dog in a fight, and I'm retired, and I also think I'll get raked over the coals for doing it. I think anybody who's going to do it has got to be ready to be just have all the rocks thrown at them.
Well, we've kind of got some sort of regulation in the UK called the DWA license. That's a dangerous wild animals license, right? So you have to have that for keeping venomous snakes, crocodiles, all that sort of stuff comes under a DWA license. Yet I can still go into an LFS and buy a stonefish or a blue ring octopus without question, without license, without anything. It falls through the gaps. But I'm just keeping exotic pets or whatever. So just where you have to have a home inspection to prove you've got the facility to care for that animal for its lifetime. And that would take away all the big fish, like the tank busting tropical fish, freshwater stuff. It would take away all the, the almost impossible to keep stuff like cat sharks long term that haven't got the space and dangerous stuff, corallivores or whatever it may be. If there was something like that, it's just how do you police it? How much is it going to cost to enforce it? And
what always scares me is when you get government involved, government always abuses.
Yep.
Always.
Yep. And so I followed what you said before. We got to police our own. We have to police our own because if somebody comes in here, they're going to do it for us and we're not going to like it.
Absolutely.
And especially those people who do it for you doesn't understand what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's
because they don't care.
Yeah.
And we're also with what's going on in the natural world, because we rely on the wild, we're going to just start to lose these fights, right? At some point, the idea of you're collecting that from the wild to keep in your house? No, they're in trouble. We need to leave them where they are and help their environment and make them, live better. They're not going to understand the arguments of, we're getting fragments of opportunity that are broken. We're taking a little and growing it. That they're not going to care about that. It's just going to be no. And that said, maybe we should switch to a happy topic.
One last good question on this from ERNet 100. Is picking corals off the reef considered good practice, like catching fish? I mean, they can be exploited so easily. We've had a big issue of corals that aren't legal in the UK, appearing in the UK because they've been transshipped through a different part of the world and the paperwork's been washed and they arrive. So it's a policing issue, but I guess from a sustainability issue, is that where the question's going? Is that considered good practice, like sustainably harvesting fish?
Sure.
I think if you remove a fish, the fish is removed. But if you take a fragment of coral, the mother colony is still there.
If you take a frag, it is. But if you dig out the whole thing, like a scolly, for example, a single polyp stony coral.
Oh, that's the big difference. That is taking the scolly. I think is more like removing a fish. Yeah, I think that's why the scolly is banned in certain countries, including UK. Right? Is that true?
Yeah, scolly still are. Yeah, we've had a few.
Yeah, the meat coral, scolly, those things shouldn't be even taken away. It take all these years to.
So I have a question on that. I mean, I had the conversation, about the, acanthos, scollies and everything. And, it was brought up to me that the amount of, let's say, scollies out there, the ones that we're harvesting are the top, 1%, 2% of the colorful ones. And the majority other ones are going to be brown or just not desirable colors. So if we're harvesting that 1%, for what we're taking, is it negligible? Because by the time, we're really only looking for this specific color. By the time, we're taking that, they're already reproducing to, catch back up and replace.
Well, if you take too many of that 1%, then that color goes away. We can absolutely have impacts by over collection in local areas. Try to find a flame angel in Mindanao. They were over collected there, so there's not. I think I think sustainable, responsible for collection from the wild is the smartest way to go. There, anything we're doing artificially is already being done out in the wild better than we're doing it. I think we should keep doing it, but responsible, sustainable collection is so good. If you have zones that you leave fallow for 2 years or whatever, and you keep the collection zones moving around. There's great ways to do it. It helps local communities. It helps people be aware of what's going on reefs. It encourages surveys to find out about the scolies. Are we really taking 1%? Are other people taking more and selling them to different markets who don't really care so much? We don't have that information as far as I can tell. So, but that, of course, makes everything more expensive. And this hobby is kind of based on things being less expensive. So it's a tough position to be in. This is one thing governments are good for. Governments don't necessarily care about spending money on getting information that they think is important. Just convincing them that this kind of information being important enough for them to care about is the hard part. But the resources that go to farming corals ex situ versus collecting from the wild, probably about the same, probably less in the wild. So I think there's room for both. But if we don't if we don't get the numbers, we don't really enforce it, sadness, crying, emojis, tear, filter.
True that. Well, look, gents, we're coming towards the end of our 2 hours, but I've got a few questions finally to just put you on the spot a bit for, Rich.
I love it.
So, firstly, actually, before I do that one, what are you working on at the minute? What's your project on the go at the moment?
I got 2 that are taking my time right now. Over here, I've got a weird anemone tank that I'm in love with. It's like a 40-gallon cube, and I got weird ass anemones and mushrooms in it. I love it. And the other one is this 5-gallon tank that I've set up with Madagascar coral crouchers and a big piece of stylo. And I'm loving that little tank too. So those are the 2 kind of things. And then I have to split my 2 Apex systems up because they're too overwhelmed. So that's a project on its own.
Fair. Okay, right. Now the question's put you on the spot.
Okay, should I answer these without thinking, lightning round style?
Yeah, that's it. Straight off the top.
Okay. All right.
You've got a brand new tank in your fish room now. You can pick one fish. What's going in it?
Neptune grouper.
Ooh, we've seen a couple of those come around recently in the UK. I think they're like 2 imported.
Yeah, I took care of one at the academy, and it's like having a puppy. Now, I when they came around, someone offered one to me at an incredible price, but I don't have any place to put a fish that's going to be 14, 17 inches.
Wow.
True. Yeah. I'm guessing they're going to like it on the cooler side as well, being a deep water fish. Is that right? They do. I kept it at probably 70, 72 in American freedom units of temperature. about 1920. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. All right, same question. Coral display. What's your go-to coral? A monoculture of green star polyps.
What?
No, I don't want that. But that's the first thing that came to my head. I had a new tank of coral, and I could put any coral in it. Wow.
Be as far out as you like. Deep
that's
sea or whatever.
That's tough for me because I have so much freedom now. I'm going to go with the weird anemones, which are still kind of hard to get and hard to get through survivorship, which bothers me. But yeah, I'm going to go. It's not really a coral, but I like the Hemfrechi anemones and the Phylodiscus, the mimic anemones.
Awesome. Okay.
Oh, that's
really
the mimic
cool.
anemone?
Yeah, it's a terrible display unless you know what you're looking at. Otherwise, it's like, why don't you just get mushrooms? It's like, yeah, shut up.
Okay, the one piece of reefing equipment you cannot live without.
Apex.
Straight up.
I could not do what I'm doing in my house without the controller. There's no way.
I'm gonna give a testament to this. When you guys saw me disappear a second ago, it's because I had my AC actually trip because the water backed up in it, so it actually turned my condenser off. So my temperature was rising in here, and I was feeling clammy. And I get a notification on my phone that one of my tanks is above a certain temperature, and that's what I just ran out there to fix my AC in the middle of this, or disaster averted. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll justify that a little bit. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm also, when I was working, I was going to the field for 3 weeks at a time. I want to go on vacation. I don't want to do water changes ever again. The Apex does that for me. I can troubleshoot from anywhere in the world. Now, that's not for everyone. It makes the system more complex, even though it's built on simple foundations. It's a stupid, complex system. But because I understand it, I can not even pay attention to the tanks for weeks at a time because everything's just chugging along. But that's not something you can just do. You got to learn it and have a lot of whys and be on top of it to learn what you can actually pull off and what you can't. But yeah, that was my first response answer. I love it. That's a great question.
Cool. No, it's a good answer. I think I agree. I think the money I've spent on Apex probably has paid for itself. So
yeah,
100%.
Now is it perfect? No, but get over it.
Terrible.
Yeah, but it's what we got. So make it work the best you can. Plug your Apex into a universal power supply or a power station. The Apex head itself.
Yeah.
Do everything you can to make it not lose power. We know this is a thing. We know the workaround. Instead of belly aching that it doesn't do what you want, just make it do what you want.
100%.
So the mimic. Sorry, I just have one quick question. The mimic anemone you're mentioning, look like posing xenia.
Not this one.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't have I don't have one of those. I'd love one of those. That would be awesome.
Okay, that's my question.
They look like algae. The mimic anemones
my
look
goodness.
like different kinds of algae.
Before I ask you
those are
another
hard to
stupid
keep.
question, I would just want to shoehorn in one last question from the audience.
Yeah,
I want to include everyone from Roland Munchie. Sorry, I said that wrong. Question for Rich: spawning acros. I can't get past settlements. Do I need an army of baby urchins? Now, I've heard Jamie Craggs talk about this and said that's how he got past because they eat a certain amount of algae to enable settlement, just the right amount with baby urchins. So something along those lines. So go for it.
So So you get settlement. You want them to grow from settled, right?
That's I can't get past settlements.
Yeah, so he's gotten settlement has happened. Yeah, an army of baby urchins will help. Absolutely. If you need to spawn those yourself, you may need 100 days lead time to have them at the right size, or you get someone to spawn them for you, and then you pay $5 each, and they're expensive. But yeah, algae and CCA wants to cover everything that's very small. So I got a soldering microscope that I use with dental tools, and that's what you go and you kind of pick around corals. But herbivores are better because they won't kill your corals. So by accident, you got all those dental tools around something that's a millimeter. You slip and you're going to slip, and that coral is gone. I think that'll be in the third part of the coral magazine series I'm doing. I'm just finishing up the second part, and the first part's out there now. But yeah, great question. Yeah, and hopefully, Roland, you can figure out a way to do it. Maybe Roland, are you awesome with lasers and CNC machines and AI? Because if you can make a laser that will zap all around the baby coral, boy, that would sure make keeping baby corals easier.
Now we're talking. Give it 10 years, we'll have this chat again and see what people have come up with.
Yeah, that'll all be automated. The stuff Ames is doing, holy cow! The Australian Institute of Marine Science.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that's coming down the pike, unbelievable. But you need to be huge.
Agreed. Right, last question, and it's going to because it's the last one because it's going to create a massive argument in the comments. Straight off the top of your head, no deliberation. To water change or not to water change?
Water change. 100%. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll wait for that to blow up in the comments. we all reef different, and that is the beauty of this game, right? That's how I see it. Beauty of it. So look, we've hit the 2-hour mark now. I just want to say, Richard, I do have to apologize because this conversation, I've gone all over the place because there's so much stuff I wanted to get out of you. I want to download your brain on so many topics, and I've tried to flit around as many as possible, but we'd love to have you back on at some point to do a deep dive on some of those. So I apologize if we've gone around the houses a bit, but it's been great to have you on. You've been a fantastic guest. I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending 2 hours on your Friday to come and talk reefing with us. As well, thank you to Dong. Thank you for Terrell. I know you feel ill, but great to have you on board again. Thanks everyone in the comments for joining and asking questions, and we shall see you all on the next live stream next Friday. Stay tuned.
Excellent.
I like that outro. Was the guy in the